Good morning everybody and welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Susie Morley, the leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I'm chairing this meeting this morning. First, to remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent and also your laptops. Finally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please could members make sure they're logged in and ready to use the app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Can I now move to the agenda, please? Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Fleming, Councillor Brewster and Councillor Gould, and Councillor Wellon, the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, has also forwarded apologies.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registerable or non-registerable interest by members. Are there any to declare? No? Thank you. Item 3, MCA/22/47, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2023. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Richardson, and seconding Councillor Flatman. I think we can do this by a vote, show of hands.
That's 6 votes for, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or the Joint Audit and Standards Committee.
There are no matters referred, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7, forthcoming decisions list. Are there any comments? No? Thank you very much. Item 8 is MCA/22/48 is the General Fund Financial Monitoring Report for 2022-23 Quarter 3. And I invite Councillor Whitehead, the Cabinet Member for Finance, to introduce this report. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the first of my 2 reports today, I'd like to introduce the General Fund Financial Monitoring for Quarter 3, 22-23. So it's based on 9 months of actual financial data from April to December 22, which is used to forecast the outturn for the full year 22-23. The report also sets out to explain any significant variances against budget. Members will note the new format that we've introduced to this report compared to the previous quarterly monitoring reports. All the detailed information is now contained in the appendix, with the numbers and explanations set out side by side in landscape format. And I trust members will find this a presentational improvement. In the Quarter 2 outturn report, we were forecasting a net expenditure overspend of 839,000, which was marginally up from the Quarter 1 forecast. With the benefit of an extra 3 months of actual data, we revised that net expenditure overspend down to 548,000. And the bulk of that is covered by the inflationary pressures reserve of 500,000 we brought forward from 21-22. This leaves just 48,000 to be offset against the Growth and Efficiency Fund. This means that the vast bulk of the large surplus we forecast for 22-23 remains intact. The amount that we set aside in 22-23 for the Commercial Development Risk Reserve of 1.865 million is also no longer required, given the successful sale and receipt on Gateway 14 from the range, and this reserve can now be repurposed. I'm happy to answer any detailed questions that members may have on the variance schedules that build up the overspend position by individual department. However, I trust the major variance commentary that the finance team has provided alongside the numbers already gives a great deal of explanation. Within the appendix to the report is also a schedule of general fund revenue reserves which total over 22 million after committed funds are taken into account. The appendix also includes a line-by-line general fund capital forecast, and again I'm happy to answer any questions members may have on that capital forecast, possibly aided where necessary on some of the finer detail by our finance team present today. But I'd now like to move the recommendation set out in paragraph 3 that we note only at this stage the forecasted overspend, the reserves movement and revised capital programme. I would ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Do we have any questions from anybody else? Councillor Field?
Yes. I suppose first of all I want to say we do welcome the new format. That is an improvement, I think. Always good to have a lot of detail to get lost in. But and many of these numbers we've seen, you know, we've questioned before, so I won't go through endless questions. Just really the issue is that the overspend is improving, getting less, which clearly is a good thing. I wouldn't want to see it going in the opposite direction. But we have pointed out on many occasions that the district regularly improves its financial position as you approach the year end, and that the concern is that by being too pessimistic about that early on, you know, one makes other decisions with a, what should we say, a less generous head on. So the real question is, are you happy that the forecasting is as accurate as it could reasonably be, that at this stage improving by around 300,000 is a good thing, but is that biased decisions in a way we wouldn't desire? The last time when we looked at the budget, which was only a couple of weeks ago. So, are you satisfied that you've got this right, and that we're not still being too pessimistic about income and overestimating outgoings as we head through the year? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. These last couple of budgets, we've really tried hard not to sort of be over pessimistic line by line, because obviously if you do that, then the overall position gets to a situation where we saw perhaps in the past where we had £2 or £3 million surpluses against budget. And I mean, the fact that we've coming in with overspends now tends to suggest that we've possibly even gone too far the other way. It's good to see things are improving from Q3 to Q2, and I'd like to think that rather than it just being a case of getting the numbers finer, you know, obviously the officers are looking at these at their individual departments quarter by quarter, seeing where overspends are occurring, or seeing where there are items that could be spent that haven't been spent, and basically sort of fine-tuning, so sort of using the financial monitoring for the purpose it's intended, which is to sort of steady and steer the course of the council. In terms of there are always, in such a complex budget, there'll always be the odd little error or odd little oversight, and which is a learning position for our finance team and for the department managers. But I'm happy that things are on an improving trend, and I think we've got a good handle on our finances.
Sort of slightly in wider question. Obviously, this sort of improvement can be just because there's a whole raft of, say, contracts that are not actually going to deliver on time, so the spend has moved backwards. And I won't go on with a whole range of examples, but just the issue is what should we be looking at here, and what should we be telling our parish councils or whatever, our residents that has changed? Is there any clear single issue, you know, something we have misestimated, something that hasn't come in on time, or is it a whole raft of different minor items?
Well, clearly the budget was produced back in, well, it was approved in February 22, which means that a lot of the work was done even before that, and certainly the cost of living crisis and so much that's gone on economically in the world since the start of 22 has had a major effect. Personally, I think we're getting through the worst of it now, and some forecasts are saying that inflation should get back to, you've been on track pretty early in 24, and interest rates, if they haven't peaked yet, will be peaking very soon. So I think the message to parishes is there's still we're still showing a good surplus on our this year's figures. We've got a surplus in budgets and the 4-year outlook. We've frozen council tax for 2 years on the trot, and things look pretty rosy, I think.
I think also your assertion that the underspend is due to projects not being completed is generally not true. It's more because of our success in getting external funding in to support our residents and our communities. So it's a testament to our success, I think, rather than a failure of projects.
Thank you. I didn't make that assertion. I suggested that was a possible reason. Very pleased to hear it isn't.
Thank you. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, like my colleague, also welcome the new format. It makes it a bit easier for me to understand it, and I'm not a kind of figures person. My question is really about the scale of the variances. Obviously, some of them are very minor, understandable. Some of them are, quite big, 26%, 35% in one department. So just a couple of questions drilling down into the detail, if that's okay. The strategic property on page 4 of the appendix, there's a 49k overspend on the changes in the office floor plate. I kind of got the impression that was all going forward quite smoothly, but we seem to be spending quite a bit extra there because it's later than budgeted. And then on page 5, in the finance, commissioning and procurement section, the bank charges are 38k higher than expected. And I'm just wondering if there's any explanation for that. Obviously, that's dealing with the payments to the council for council tax, but it seems to be quite a big figure over and above what one would expect.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. In terms of strategic property, I mean, this is one example that perhaps Councillor Field could have taken as one that had slipped a bit, because I think the intention originally was to be in on the new floor plan prior to Christmas, rather than, I think today is the sort of, this month is the sort of go live date there. So there has been a slippage there, and there has been a cost overrun. So that is just a fact of life compared to what the budgeted timetable. I say that was put together some long while ago. In terms of the bank charges of 38,000 overrun, I think I'd like to just pass that across to officers for a little explanation, if possible.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the bank charges, it's to do with the types of transactions that we're now seeing coming through. So credit cards carries a higher bank charge, and we're seeing a large volume of those now coming through compared to what we budgeted for. So we are keeping an eye on that, and we're keeping that under review just to see what behaviours are driving those payments, to see what we can do about that.
Thank you, everybody. Does anybody wish to debate this item? Okay, so the recommendations are that, subject to any further budget variations that arise during the rest of the financial year, the net expenditure overspend position of 548,000 and forecast reserve movements referred to in Appendix A of the report be noted, and the revised 2021/22 capital programme referred to in Appendix A, Section 5 be noted. I now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Lovely, thank you. Item 9, MCA/22/49 is the Housing Revenue Account Financial Monitoring System for Financial Monitoring for Quarter 3 for 2022-23. Invite Councillor Whitehead to introduce this report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'm pleased now to report, as I introduce the report, the Housing Revenue Account Financial Monitoring Quarter 3 of 22-23. So as for the General Fund, we've got 9 months of actual data to extrapolate forward for the current year. And as this is still a forward projection, rather than reporting historical data, the information is simply for noting only. So the forecasted deficit for the year in this Quarter 3 extrapolation has grown from the forecast in Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. The adverse variance to budget is now 927,000 compared to the 770,000 at the Quarter 2 stage and the 489,000 at Quarter 1 stage, and clearly this is a disappointing trend. So we're now forecasting a deficit outturn of 832,000 compared to the budget surplus of 95,000. And as for the General Fund, we're presenting the outturn in the new format that I explained for the General Fund. Income variance is little change from Quarter 2. The housing management adverse variance has moved out to 554,000 from 382,000 anticipated in Quarter 2. But the explanation for the variances are set out on the schedule over 9 bullet point headings. Building services cost overrun compared to budget is now 10.7%, a little higher than the 9.5% anticipated in Quarter 2. Repairs and maintenance in areas other than the trade teams has decreased, producing a small positive variance, and further work on depreciation has upped that charge by 170,000 or 3.8% based on 22-23 revaluations. When we come to the final outturn reporting in June and July, I would anticipate some adjustments to interest payable and revenue contribution to capital, with possibly some reductions in the latter. The final schedule in the appendix forecasts our capital spend. Activity on new builds and acquisitions continues at pace. We spent 1.330 million in Quarter 1, 5.494 million in Quarter 2, 4.894 million in Quarter 3, and anticipate a further 8.987 million in Quarter 4, to give a total for the year for new builds and acquisitions of 20.705 million. Members will see that after a project-by-project review, we've removed some new build projects from the programme as not being deliverable in the medium term. But beyond the short term, I feel so much awaits the new 30-year HRA business plan, and for now the numbers in this monitoring report are for noting only. I'd therefore like to propose the recommendations set out in paragraph 3 of the report, and ask that they be seconded. And I'm happy to answer any questions members may have, ably supported as always by officers from both finance and housing teams. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor? Councillor Haddingham, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Questions from anybody else? Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In the section of the report on environmental implications, there's some details of things that the council is doing as part of the carbon neutral agenda. So 11.2 says that the Mid-Suffolk has installed 87 air source heat pumps in council-owned homes, but that's since 2020, so that figure seems a bit out of date. Have we got something a bit more up to date, or perhaps for the last, or this current year? And then it goes on to say that our new homes design and technical specification will be launched in 2022. So that is clearly looking backwards. I wonder whether this section is kind of being cut and paste from an old report or something. So that was my question.
Thank you. Well, I was going to confidently say that I would assume it's up to date and that the figures in 11.2 are accurate, but with your observations about 11.5 and the use of the future tense for a year that's gone by, I think I would just like to perhaps pass that over to officers just for a comment on the 87, and I believe that the design tech spec has been already launched, but I'll pass that over to officers if I may.
So I'll need to get back to you on the number of air source heat pumps installed after 2020, although I don't think we will have done any because of the COVID restrictions, but I'll need to check that. I'm sorry, just what was your other question?
Oh, it's just it's reporting as future, something that's obviously in the past, 11.5.
Ah, yes, okay. So the design and technical specification. So as Councillors alluded to, we're yet to write our new business plan. We're hoping to complete that this year. When we've done that, we'll be able to, put in place our new design specification. However, I'm pleased to be able to tell you that the most efficient way of building is seen as passive house, and I'm sure that's something we'll be paying high regard to.
Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to debate this item? Oh, sorry. Apologies, Councillor Field.
I'd like to miss up on the question. Just looking at the maintenance budget you have here, planned maintenance, 3.4 roughly million budget, a carry forward of $1 million. It was a COVID year, not surprising. A current budget of therefore 4.48. Actual to date 1.776. Bearing in mind this is 9 months. Which I think is quite a substantial chunk of a year. Full year forecast 3.264. Thinking about accuracy in forecasting, etc., how can we spend 1.776 in 9 months, and we're going to up that to 3.264 in the next 3 months? It seems sort of, to me, quite a question. Obviously, the carry forward is, that sort of says that we're not spending at a rate higher than our original budget, which, given staffing restrictions and things, may well be fair. But really, question: are they real forecasts, or is that in any way sensible? Are you actually accelerating work to that extent? And we'll leave all the others. There's similar things. If one point to a tedious process of going through them all, there will be other things of that nature. The line below it, for instance, is rather similar.
Thank you, Councillor Field, and I think that's a very valid observation you've made, that I think as we get to the 9-month stage, it does sort of tend to highlight perhaps that sometimes the full year forecasts are rather aggressive. I mean, I think as I said when I introduced in terms of the capital spend on new builds, we're sort of accelerating that and have a high figure in for the fourth quarter, although I believe that's a genuine one that, you know, in terms of programmes coming to completion there. But I think in terms of planned maintenance, the explanation there is given in terms of some lack of technical officer capacity to start with, but I think also with the lots of staffing changes that have gone on in the housing team, I think it's probably quite right that there's probably a little bit of a pause whilst, you know, looking at how our planned maintenance is being spent and directed is being sort of reassessed. But again, I'm happy for the Director for Housing to perhaps put her own commentary on that if she wants.
Thank you. So the key to producing a sound plan for planned maintenance is as you're aware, looking at our stock and understanding what the need is. And to do that, we need we need sound data to be able to plan appropriately. We have got our transformation team in, as you're aware, and Paul Crowe, who is a member of our transformation team, has also been cleansing the data required to put into place a new programme for planned upgrades in our properties. So I can inform members that that is in place, and what we are now doing is we are procuring contractors who are able to carry out that work. So I'm confident that our planned programme will go ahead as budgeted.
Thank you. You know, just to return to that for a second, if you look at the other maintenance line, you've spent actual to date of £602,000 in 3 quarters. 600 divided by 3 is 200, so you're spending 200,000 a quarter. If I add 200,000 to 600,000, I get 800,000 by the year end. Now, I quite accept that you might have accelerated something dramatically, but you know, that really is very dramatic. Is it real?
Councillor Field, I think, as I said in answer to my first answer, you're certainly making very valid points there, and certainly when I tend to review these schedules over whether you know, quarter by quarter with our finance team, I often make the same point. But in terms of this information, sort of feeds through. So I'm not pointing the finger there at the finance team, but in terms of I you know, I'd hard to agree that it looks aggressive, but if it isn't spent by the 31st of March, then it will be carried forward, and if it's spent in April or May, okay, it's slightly delayed, but at least the capital's there for spending, and it's happening fairly soon. Watch this space, I suppose you could say.
Thank you. Moving now into debate. Does anybody wish to debate this item? Okay. So the recommendations are that subject to any further budget variations that arise during the rest of the financial year, the adverse variance of £927,000 referred to in Appendix A, Section 2 of the report be noted, and the revised 2022/23 revised capital programme referred to in Appendix A, Section 3 be noted. And I'll now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. That is 6 votes for, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Item 10 is MCA/22/50, the quarter 3 performance. This item is just for noting. I'll just run through a summary of action, performance highlights for the customer's portfolio. So in quarter 3, there was an average of 375 calls per day and a total of 160 visits to the Stowmarket access point over the period. The average wait time was 3 minutes and 44 seconds, which is a decrease from the previous quarter from 5 minutes and 41 seconds. And our officers and web team have commenced training with PlaceCube, which is to help them to understand the new website. We've recruited 53 champions from across the council to help with rewriting our web content to make sure that it's accessible and fit for purpose. I'm going to ask each of the portfolio holders in turn to summarise their achievements over the previous quarter. We'll start with economy. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, quarter 3 was a busy month for the economy portfolio, with a number of different projects ongoing, and several of those actually we're seeing the fruits of in this quarter. Obviously, the council will be aware that we approved the shelf project, or the initial business case for the shelf project at our full council last month. A lot of work went into that in Q3, including the development of that business case and the initial design freeze for the scheme as a whole. We also continue to work on the development of the Skills and Innovation Centre at Gateway 14. Again, the initial business case for that is on the agenda later today. The development also of the Culture, Heritage and Visitor Economy Strategy, also on the agenda today, but also a number of other achievements in the quarter. For example, the second Innovation Awards, the first one which was obviously in person, and I think those who attended would agree it was a fantastic event. We also had the launch of KTP Lite, which we've branded as Innovate to Elevate. We also had the submission of the full business case for Freeport East, which of course, as members will be aware, has subsequently been approved by the Treasury. And then finally, on quite a positive note, we launched the first Schools Enterprise Challenge with Hartismere School. And by way of a very recent update, I'm delighted to say that I visited Hartismere School on Friday morning to hand out the certificates to the winners of that competition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Communities portfolio, Councillor Flatman. Sorry, communities and wellbeing.
Thank you, Chair. So the spotlights on the community grants are for £414,835 capital grants allocation were made last quarter, and £243,927 went on the 106 funds allocated, and 15,749 minor grants awarded, and VCSE organisations, that's the voluntary organisations, supported through revenue grants. We have continued with our locality grants flying out the doors, and the majority of Mid-Suffolk, I think, has now been spent, but they are just finalising the last figures for that. Community safety and our antisocial behaviour cases in quarter 3. 6 new ASB cases received at the ASB partnership panels, 27 new ASB cases received, separate to those discussed with the ASB partnership panels, and 1% of the ASB cases open more than 6 months. 1 ASB community trigger called for. The Antisocial Behaviour ASB Crime and Policing Act 2014 introduced a community trigger. The trigger is designed to give victims of ongoing ASB the right to request a review of their case and bring agencies together to take a collaborative approach to finding a solution. 15 staff members from the communities team supported the Suffolk Owl Sanctuary as a local registered charity by volunteering for the day, which we are rolling out through the organisation, so staff can have a day or so to help registered charities. This is being rolled out across the organisation for those who want to take part, which is fantastic. And that was all about what we have done. Obviously, today at this cabinet, we will be approving the up-to-date seal bids, and also we have we are continuing to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of CCTV cameras, analysing data and looking at trends in hotspot areas, and this will support the police and also support community engagement events. This is all carrying on. With the health and well-being, we had 112 children supported through the Holiday Activity Fund. This was at Christmas and half term, and activities, 8 activities provision ran through the Holiday Activity Fund at Christmas, and 2 care homes were supported through dementia-friendly offers. Okay, so the care homes were supported with OMI board, which is a projector that is interactive for care homes to use for their customers, which has been financed by the council. We have leased 6, and they're making their way around mid-Suffolk at the moment, which has been paid for by some of us mid-Suffolk extra funds that we've put in for wellbeing and communities. Within this care home help for dementia, we are also this quarter going to look at the Archie project, which is where children from local schools go in and spend time with the elderly inmates of the homes, and talk about interesting things that the elder generation can tell the youngsters, and the youngsters work closely, and this is being rolled out across some care homes, and also different schools are taking part, which is fantastic, and the care homes are finding this very beneficial. With the wellbeing, this quarter, it's all very well talking about last quarter, but this quarter, you have that in front of you. This quarter, we are carrying on with our social subscribing, and we're hoping to be able to publish that soon, which schools are going to be involved with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. And for the housing portfolio, Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. Performance has remained steady. We've had 55 cases where homelessness has been successfully prevented or relieved. The demand for temporary accommodation has increased since the last quarter. We've had 47 houses placed into temporary accommodation. 56 houses, properties have been relet, and 37 new affordable homes built or acquired. The voids are still not as we'd like to see them. There's 56 average days for the voids to be relet, but we've got a new voids and workflow model in our open housing system, which means that all data and voids progress can be now viewed within the system rather than a spreadsheet, which makes it easy to know the status of any void property. And we're developing a new performance data dashboard so that we can track all voids and the performance. Work continues on our migration to a new housing system, Capita 1. There has been some delay which will be, hopefully resolved this summer, as there's some bugs in the system. But this is now with our software development team. Insight reporting dashboards, the project is on target and has been delivered to HRA and Tenancy Services. This will allow all managers to access all the reports they need for their service area and run and schedule reports themselves. Work continues on the rents compliancy audit to make sure our rents and charges are compliant. Following over from Cabinet's approval in November, we've launched our new tenant engagement strategy. Tenants received a My Home bulletin in December to alert them that the strategy is being approved, and there's been a positive response, with some tenants already coming forward to become more involved and work with us. Work continues with our tenant satisfaction collection through both perception and transactional surveys, and the results and feedback from the survey are now being used to drive service improvement. The new web pages for our sheltered housing scheme are now live, and each scheme has its own web page with a short introductory video giving prospective tenants an idea of what's on offer. Our plans for next quarter continues with the Building Services Transformation and Improvement Programme, following our self-referral to the Regulator of Social Housing, which I'll touch on later. We continue to make good progress to ensure all properties are fully compliant with the regulatory standard, with only a very small proportion awaiting inspections. There's also been an overhaul of the existing processes, and there is now more robust data around health and safety compliance to provide tenants with complete reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haddingham. And for the environment portfolio, unfortunately Councillor Fleming can't be with us today, but the highlights from that are we've completed the solar carport project, and we're now saving something in the region of 62 tonnes of carbon per year as a result of that project. And also we made a bid to the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles for EV charge points, and we were successful with that. We will be receiving £316,000 worth of funding towards that as well. So thank you, councillors. Do we have any questions? Councillor Field.
Reluctant to go first again, but still. Just the community grants area. I notice you've recognised the amount of Section 106 funds that have passed through the council for 6 projects, and I'm certainly aware of 50,000 of that, which your office has pushed everybody at 2 weeks from the deadline when it disappeared back to the developers, and we've got that done. So I can see there's some good work going on there. But I would question just how much 106 funds do we have outstanding that we're holding on to for community projects. I personally am aware of another 400,000 which are for 2 things in Councillor Whitehead's area, but funded from Blakenham Ward. And to the best of my knowledge, they've been sitting around since 2015, making little progress, or I think there's some activity now. So how much have we got outstanding, and do we really have the sort of effort behind this that we need? Because clearly some of these things are complex to put together.
I don't have the figures to hand, Councillor Field, but I'm sure we can get those to you. Tom, can you come in? Thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair. I don't have a figure at the tips of my fingers, but you can find that out on the Council's Execom website. If you'd like me to go through that with you, then I can, but that is transparent and available on there as S106 financials, and you can go into any individual parish or ward or across the whole district.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but it's just the issue that this money goes back to developers if we don't use it. So it is unlike SIL, which if we're not very quick, it just gains interest. This cash disappears.
I think the thing about 106 is you can only spend it on certain projects. So I'm sure the officers try not to let any money go back to developers.
And we'll include a link to the Execom database in the minutes. Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Question on page 20 of the quarterly report. It talks about an emerging project in partnership with the County Council Virtus and the local parish councils to pilot a taxi bus. Can I ask where this project has been initiated? Because I'm struggling to find out from county officials, and I haven't heard anything from our staff on this. I've only heard it from a parish council. clearly that area is where I represent as a county councillor, but it's not clear where that project is being led from. I understand there's possibly a meeting this Friday about it, but I'm not sure where or when. And then secondly, just the...
Sorry, Councillor Field. Councillor Manning. Can you just tell me which page you're referring to?
Page 20.
Page 20.
It's in the community section. It's about halfway down the page. It's talking about a merging project or proposal.
I'm just going to bring in our officer, Fiona.
Yes, it's a project that I believe originated from discussions the community were having, but Catherine Davis, our Sustainable Travel Officer, I think has been attending or is about to attend a meeting to find out a little bit more and see how we can help support it.
Can I just move on to the next paragraph down on that page, wherever it is? So this is referring to a meeting that took place with parish councils, and one of our officers was there, where there's an identified need for community transport. I wonder if this is a potential place where our electric bus project could fit in. I wonder whether that the communities team are talking to the people who have got the funds set aside for that, and try and link the two up.
I'm sure the director of the economic growth and the communities team do work together on all these projects, because we have done on the electric bus, etc., etc. So I expect you are talking. Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Sorry, does anybody wish to debate this item? No? So the recommendation is that quarter 3 performance be noted. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on now to item 11. This is MCA/22/51, the Community Infrastructure Levy Expenditure Programme for March 2023. I'm going to invite the Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce this report. Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh dear. Yes, thank you. Today we have 6 SIL bids to consider, affecting the parishes of Hawley, Stradbroke, Stow Upland, Hoxton, Barham and Mendham. 4 of those bids are for Cabinet to decide, and 2 are simply for Cabinet to note because they're below the threshold. Excuse me. And with your permission, Chairman, what I'll do is I'll introduce each bid and then hand over to the professional lead for professional lead for key sites and infrastructure to give a bit of detail around each one, if that's all right with you. Thank you. Okay, the first one then is bid number M22-14, and it's for a play area in Hawley. The SIL bid itself is for £71,000, which represents 70% of the total eligible project costs. So the professional lead for key sites and infrastructure will give a bit of information on this particular bid. Thank you.
Hawley Parish Council, after consultation with residents, are
proposing to upgrade their current play area provision. This will provide greater choice and diversity for outdoor play provision and exercise for the children of the parish, and provide an outdoor space for families and social groups to meet. The project will provide new play equipment, including a pyramid climbing frame, metal combination swing set, new multi-play unit, new roundabout and new ground surfacing to enable the site to be used all year round. The new apparatus will increase the diversity of the equipment and therefore the overall footfall to the play area site, and the project will use sustainable materials to ensure longevity and easier maintenance for the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the recommendation is to Cabinet for that is to approve it, please. The next one is M22-26, which is improvements to Stradbroke Health Centre. The bid is for £29,724, which represents 75% of the total eligible costs. The details are...
Thank you. Stradbroke Parish Council own part of Stradbroke Health Centre. The parish are proposing to develop a multi-phase project to extend and improve the current health provision in Stradbroke. The first phase will provide an extension to the current health centre building. SIL is assisting with the energy improvement and the second phase of the project. This second phase will be looking to deliver new solar panels, roof lighting and overall improvement of systems that heat the centre. The works will enhance the energy efficiency of the site, overall decreasing the carbon footprint of the centre, whilst also improving the user experience of the site for staff and patients who visit the health centre in Stradbroke. This project has been collaboratively worked on and agreed with the Integrated Care Board and residents and has full support. Thank you.
And the recommendation for that is for approval. Third bid is M22-17 in Stow Upland. This is a new footpath between Trinity Meadows to Trinity Walk bus stop. It's a SIL bid of £14,200, and that represents 100% of the total project costs. The details are over to you, Christine, please.
There is a planning background to the provision of this footpath. It was requested by a planning committee on an approved development involving an uplift of an additional 19 dwellings. Following a second application on adjoining land for 80 dwellings, there was an opportunity to connect the new site to the new footpath. The developers agreed to bridge the ditch between the two sites, but they would not agree to extend the path beyond this point as they did not own or control the land necessary to complete the link. The District Council owns this land. Given the need to secure a link from the new development to the bus stop over council land as part of the planning process, this SIL bid has come forward from the Estate Service to provide the necessary footpath. As you'll know, District SIL is collected for the provision of infrastructure to support new housing growth, and in this case it is entirely appropriate to allow the use of District SIL to address and fully fund the provision of the required footpath. Following consultation with the two board members, revisions to the exact route have now been produced, and the route is amended in order to address board member concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, we recommend approval. I recommend the Cabinet to approve that SIL bid. Now we move on to M22-23, which is a lavatory project in Hoxton Church. This is a SIL bid for £28,090.88, and represents 75% of the total eligible project costs. Christine, if you could give some detail on that, please.
Thank you. There are currently no accessible other public toilet facilities in Hoxton. When built, these facilities will be open to use for members of the church congregation, local residents, and importantly, visitors to the village. It does represent an oven-ready scheme with evidence of wide community support, together with funding contributions from Hoxton Parochial Church Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, the recommendation is for Cabinet to approve that bid. Moving on to M22-24, Barham Kirby Green. Excuse me. This is for fencing. It's a sale bid of £3,377.75, representing 75% of the total project eligible costs. This decision has been made under delegated powers and is therefore for Cabinet to note only. There are some details around this one, and I ask you to let us know what they are, please, Christine.
Thank you. This seal bid, as you say, is for fencing only. The play area is now in use, but there were safety concerns for the area and the wider field that were raised. This project will look to increase the safety of the field for both children and parents who are using the site. Thank you.
As I say, this seal bid has been approved under delegated powers and is for Cabinet to note only. And finally, we have bid number M22-28 in Mendham. This is for the improvement of the car park and the increase of spaces there from 18 to 22. The seal bid is for £9,733.81, and this represents 75% of the total eligible project costs. The details of that, Christine will tell us, please.
The lack of off-road parking facilities and roadside parking issues are ongoing issues for residents and visitors to the village. The street car park is the only car park in the village, and the surface has begun to disintegrate, and it is riddled with potholes. These are a trip hazard for all car park users. Improving the surface, but also increasing the amount of spaces, will help to reduce the amount of roadside parking and congestion within the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say, this bid has been approved under delegated powers to note only. But the recommendation to Cabinet under paragraph 3.1 of the report is to approve all those bids for Cabinet, the four to decide and for the two to be noted. And there is also a recommendation for Cabinet to note and endorse the SIL expenditure programme, which is given at Appendix A under paragraph 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair, and I think those projects are all worthy of our granting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. Do we have any questions? Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No problems with any of those bids, all sounds great. My question is sort of a wider one about the SIL process, and looking at Appendix A, we have a large number of outstanding bids stacking up. So my question is, those bids are not valid currently. We hope, obviously, they will become valid. What's the hold-up? Is it mostly to do with external bodies providing the information that's required to make the bid valid? Well, I'll leave it there. That's the question, I think.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mellon. The detail of those individual bids and the reasons why they're why they're still on the books, as it were. It's a fairly complex situation. I will pass that over to the professional lead, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Each SIL bid generally is different, and they come in from different sources, whether they be from charity organisations or from parishes or from infrastructure providers. Sometimes not all the information is submitted at the time when the bid is lodged, and we work collaboratively with the SIL bidder in order to get that scheme to a point where we can take it forward. Sometimes SIL bids also don't have all the money secured necessary to land the project, so we are sometimes also waiting for other funders to agree their funding before we can move forward. It's a myriad of things, really.
Yeah, so if I can ask a supplementary question. I understand the complexity, totally, I get that. Is it, clearly we want to move these bids forward. Are we making enough progress in moving them forward, or is it held up by outside bodies? I suppose the question is around, do we have enough capacity to move them forward ourselves where we can?
If I come in here, if it's okay through you, Chair, there is certainly sufficient capacity within the SIL team to move things forward, and other internal teams where they are the council's own bids. Where they are not, then it very much depends upon, it's kind of Tolstoy's law, every happy family is alike, every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Every SIL bid is unique and individual in its own way. Some depend on the bidder themselves, some depend on the other funders that they are bringing in. So the majority are based on either the capacity or the clarity of outside bodies to move things forward. Where they're internal, then we do have sufficient officer resource in order to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you. Hope I'm not answering the same question again in a different way, but let's, first of all, at a strategic level, I think. I notice on page 86 of the report that we have strategic funds of 2.4 million actually, of which 33%, that's a third, are allocated. We have the next fund, the ring fence fund, has 6 million, of which we have slightly over a third, 35%. And the local infrastructure fund, 2.5 million, of which we've got, again, slightly over a third allocated. Really bearing in mind that these funds are there to provide infrastructure which improves the economic environment for us all, are we really happy that this is a good enough progress? We're not talking about just one SIL bid round here, we're talking about bid rounds 1 to 9, so that's everything up to date. And we only have a third of the money actually out there being used. So that's question one, if I may try another one in a moment. Are we satisfied with that rate of activity?
Excuse me, I do take that point, which I think is a very valid criticism to make. But I think it is a question of the complexities, and I wonder if the director, which one of you would like to handle it? Take that one then, please, Christy.
Thank you. Yes, we do have money, it's clear to see, but since we started spending, which was only in 2018, we have allocated 10.8 million to 36 projects. We have done 3 primary schools, we have done 3 high schools, not to mention working on big projects like rail and health bids. And we do have 49 projects listed in the emerging project bit of your Appendix A. So there is a huge weight of work coming forward, which we are collaboratively working on. as members will be aware who are engaged with some of this work, developing projects and shaping them before they come in as silbid takes quite some time, but we are regularly meeting with infrastructure providers and all the bidders on the list of outstanding bids that we have. So I'm confident that we've got enough projects to spend the money that we have, and we have more waiting in the wings. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to...
Could I return to this?
Councillor Field?
One, if you don't mind. Okay. Thank you for that. The issue I had is, again, is looking at these. There's several bids here, which I'm sure, like all members, there's several here that I'm quite aware of. I just want to make the point that there's one here on page 121 for Babergh Parish meeting, a bid which I think I persuaded them to go forward with. And there's a whole series of things, although they've got quotes, the project's not meet various thresholds and the business case hasn't been submitted. And I'm really surprised, particularly because the same sort of comments around a bid for Little Blakenham Parish Rooms, which I've watched the pain over a number of years as that project has desperately tried to move forward and been impeded, not least by the church, who wouldn't give them a lease for a long time. And actually, you know, there are other projects in this area, similar sort of things. The high school sports hall extension down at for Claydon High School, for instance. The whole emphasis seems to be we have difficulty in making progress. And the two I mentioned, you know, Wally Binder, who runs Little Blakenham, is a experienced businessman. You may have heard of Binders, the company. Kevin Thomas, who runs Babergh Parish Council now, is, you know, used to run a large chunk of 3Ms in Germany. So these are experienced businessmen who are failing to get through the process, and it really concerns me that, you know, really the question is, what is the problem? Why, as you expressed, there's a whole raft of work there to do, but our progress towards getting it done seems to be slow. So, is a response to that? Thank you.
Yes, I clearly can't comment on individual cases such as the ones that you've mentioned, because I'm not as familiar with them as the officers are. But I think a lot of the problem is to do with the fact that there are, generally speaking, quite a number of players involved in the handling of any particular SIL bid. And it's not just our turnaround times that delay or speed up the processing. As the director has just told you, you know, we are resourced well enough to be able to handle these things ourselves. But it's when they're passed over to other bodies that the speed at which they operate cannot be controlled by us, and we just have to play the game with them as they dictate it. I think I'm more or less right in saying that, but if the director would like to add anything to it, or professional lead, then please do.
I think, yes, as I said, each bid, each application for SIL funding is unique in its own ways. They're delivered on the whole either by professional bodies, whether that's a particular GP practice, or the county council with education bids. The community level infrastructure can be more complex, but we have had a number of applications that have met the requirements. The member working group on the expenditure framework has met a number of times to discuss the requirements. Scrutiny have looked over this a couple of times and had communication directly from bid makers. The council does need to be assured that it is spending its money both efficiently and effectively, and that bids can deliver the infrastructure that is being asked. I think I would be very wary of taking an approach whereby we were allocating SIL money only to be sat in a similar environment and meeting with councillors saying, you've allocated an awful lot of SIL money, but it's not coming forward. Are we allocating to projects that aren't oven ready and aren't ready to go and haven't got their other funding in place or their planning permission in place? So I think there's been a very deliberate approach to ensure that SIL money is not kind of held up and allocated to projects that might take 2, 3, 4 years to actually come to fruition. But we are able and willing to work with community groups. The two, Councillor Field, that you've identified have both had meetings with officers, one in December and one more recently in January of this year. As the director for the service, I'm not aware of particular noise from those particular communities saying that there are unreasonable or unnecessarily onerous requests being made of them, which are stymieing their ability to bring these bids forward. But as you'll be aware, probably more so than most officers, when working within communities, different things take priority at different times and they work at different paces depending upon the voluntary effort that's often being given by those that are responsible for delivering it. So those communities are responsible, the parish rooms are responsible for upgrading the parish rooms, and the council will seek to support them where it is appropriate. We're not seeking overly kind of judicious amounts of information from those people, other than to satisfy ourselves that the monies are ready to spend and will be spent appropriately. But if you want me to pick up a conversation with either of those groups, then I'm happy to do so. Alongside the SIL team, the council does also have its communities team with its locality officers, with its funding officers and others, and quite often with SIL bids there's a coming together of SIL funding and community grants funding. So support is there and available, but if you want to pick up any individual matters, then I'm happy to do so outside of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to move us on now, because we've had 3 questions that are all been the same. So I'm going to move us on to debate. Does anybody wish to debate this item? Councillor Whitehead?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I'm heartened to see that for the bulk of these projects, clearly the District Council is working hand in glove with the parish councils or the parochial church council in one case to make these improvements to the local community. I think it's good to see that the parish councils are putting some money into these projects, although it's not clear whether that's from precept or from their local SIL. I think it'd be quite useful going forward if we could see whether the parish council's contributions are their SIL or from precepts to residents. But I think a question had passed before where some projects seem to be almost 100% funded from from our district SIL, and I think it's heartening to see that parish councils working closely on these projects. Thank you.
Councillor Flatman?
Yes. I've had a few SIL bids coming through, and I totally understand where oven ready comes from, because if you've not done all your homework and you've not filled in the forms and you haven't got your funding in hand, then it's going to take longer. So if you get all your ducks lined up, if you like, and then you go for your bid to the SIL team, then anything that little bits and pieces, they can advise you. And I mean, my parishes have only found the SIL team very, very helpful indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. So the recommendations are as detailed in the report. It's too lengthy to read them all out again. So I'm just going to go straight to ask the governance officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm now going to go for a quick break to allow everybody to go and warm up for five minutes. So it's 11:46. If we're back in here at 5 to 12, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. We're now moving on to item 12, which is MCA/22/52, the private sector housing enforcement and civil penalties policy. I invite the Cabinet Member for Housing to introduce this report. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. This report relates to maintaining and improving housing standards in the private rented sector. The private rented sector contributes towards meeting housing need in the district. Most landlords provide good standard accommodation for their tenants and manage their properties satisfactorily, but this is not so in all cases. The report proposes a new enforcement policy for our private sector housing work. It outlines the current work of our housing standards team, which is responsible for ensuring that housing conditions are safe and healthy for residents, which is a statutory council duty. At its heart, the enforcement policy seeks to provide clarity for landlords and agents on what is expected from them and the response they can expect from the council to service requests. In most cases, this involves advice and encouragement to meet minimum legal standards. The policy also outlines guidelines for officers to ensure enforcement is taken consistently, fairly, and using good and fair practice. Wherever possible, we prefer to work with landlords in order to resolve problems to improve standards. Officers occasionally come across situations where housing conditions are extremely poor and vulnerable people are left at unacceptable risk to their safety and health. For example, poor fire safety precautions in houses in multiple occupation, inadequate heating and overcrowding. Sometimes officers encounter situations where they need to use formal powers. In most extreme cases, officers work with other agencies such as the police and fire service and have been active dealing with dangerous and criminal activities relating to rented housing, such as modern-day slavery in our districts. The report proposes to charge for officer administrative time to recover costs where formal action must be taken when it has to resort to using such powers. This policy is not intended to prescribe the action that will be taken into every situation. It will guide officers when investigating cases, serving notices or taking enforcement action, including legal proceedings. It is important that officers have the option to make use of all powers available to them. The government has given powers to local authorities to take stronger action where it is justified in the private rented sector. These are known as civil penalties and are an alternative to prosecution. They enable us to penalise the worst landlords through direct financial sanctions, or prosecution, and will only be used in serious offences or where compliance cannot be achieved. The Council has developed its civil penalties approach in Appendix 2 after collaboration with colleagues in Suffolk and liaison with our legal department. This will ensure that penalties are proportionate to the offence and applied fairly. There is a system of receiving representations against the imposition of a fine and legal appeal available in all these cases. It is in line with the government's intention to prevent landlords from benefiting from unlawful behaviour. The Council intends to use these powers sparingly, only when justified and generally where enforcement action has failed to obtain compliance. Any penalties received will be retained in the team's budget. I recommend members to agree on option 1 as stated in the paragraphs 3.1 to 3.5. This is to adopt the new private rented sector housing enforcement policy, including approving and authorising the use of civil and financial penalty powers. It is also to agree a fair charging regime to recover the cost of housing enforcement action taken by the Council and to retain revenue arising from civil penalties. The reason for agreeing the recommendations are to ensure that the Council has a consistent and effective policy to tackle poor conditions in private sector housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Haddingham. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Flatman, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Questions from anybody else? Does anybody wish to debate this item? Okay. In which case, the recommendations are to agree option 1 above. I'm not going to read all these out, it's too long. So, recommendations are option 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 and 3.5. And I'm going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. And that is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Excellent, thank you very much. Item 13, MCA/22/53. This is the update on the social housing regulation and the outcome of the referral to the Regulator of Social Housing. And I'm going to invite the Cabinet Member for Housing to introduce this report. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you very much. This paper provides an update on our work around social housing regulation and compliance following our referral to the Regulator for Social Housing. So the social housing regulation. To ensure we meet our obligations, we must have a governance structure. The Regulator expects members to have oversight of all compliance issues, which include gas inspections, electrical safety checks, fire safety, asbestos, and Legionella lifts. In addition, following the tragic events in Rochdale, the regulators concluded that damp and mould must be reported via a governance structure. A structure where compliance is reported at Cabinet would give assurance that, members have oversight. This forms part of the consumer standards and is critical. The consumer standards cover all aspects of housing, therefore as with the building service performance, the housing team will be reporting high-level KPIs. This paper sets out the suggested format. And referral. Following our self-referral and subsequent regulator judgment, the regulator said they would give us time to work on our compliance and contact us in a month. As such, we have not yet received correspondence from the regulator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Haddingham, and I'm very happy to second this report. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Questions from anybody else? Does anybody wish to debate this item? Okay, so the recommendations are to note the update on recent changes to the regulation of social housing, including for stockholding local authorities, to note the outcome of the Council's recent referral to the Regulator of Social Housing, to agree the future governance and monitoring arrangements set out at paragraph 7 of this report, and to agree the new set of KPIs for the housing service set out in paragraph 6 of this report. And I'm going to invite the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Byrne, are you experiencing any issues with the voting? Thank you, Councillor Byrne. That is 6 votes for, and that's unanimous.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Item 14, MCA/22/54, is the Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Culture, Heritage and Visitor Economy Strategy. I invite the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth to introduce the report. Councillor Richardson.
Lovely, thank you very much, Chair. I am delighted to introduce paper MCA/22/54, the Joint Culture, Heritage and Visitor Economy Strategy. This strategy sets out our ambitions, aims and objectives for Mid-Suffolk for the next 5 years and will be followed by a detailed delivery plan by June of this year. Within Mid-Suffolk, we have a strong and vibrant cultural sector, supported by popular and well-established heritage assets, both of which contribute significant sums to our local economy, as I hope you can see detailed in the papers. As a council, we have been proactive in supporting culture, heritage and tourism, from the Regal Theatre, the John Peel Centre, to the new Duck and Teapot in Needham Market. But what this strategy seeks to do is provide a comprehensive and informative vision for how we can develop this sector further. Section 5 of the report outlines the process through which the strategy has been developed, including extensive stakeholder engagement in a number of workshops, a detailed evidence base covering both Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, and a cross-party working group to help inform this strategy. The evidence base that this strategy draws on highlights the areas for improvement, a notable skills gap being one of them, but rather than being a purely technocratic document, I think this strategy goes some way to help define our identity as a district. Rural, steeped in history, and with strong communities with a proud sense of place. I think the feedback contained within this report reflects that, but there is one particular point that I do want to highlight, as I think it also goes to the heart of why we are introducing this strategy, which is on page 8 of the strategy itself, which refers to Mid-Suffolk as the white space of Suffolk. And I know this is one singular comment, and it is valuable in understanding how we are perceived, but I passionately disagree with that summary of Mid-Suffolk. There is a wealth of cultural and historical offerings within our district, and so in proposing this strategy, I hope it will provide us with an opportunity to shine a light on those offerings, to help develop them further, and to champion them locally, regionally, and nationally. So I'm delighted to propose the recommendations in this report and would seek a seconder. Thank you, Chair.
And a seconder?
Happy to second.
Councillor Flatman, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Questions from anybody else? Councillor Mellon?
I'm not sure I can actually turn this into a question, but having read the strategy, I think it's really great. Just leave it there.
Thank you very much.
I can respond to that, Chair, if you like. And just say I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Go ahead. Does anybody wish to debate this item? Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate my support, my thanks to our officers as well. We have had a cross-party working party on this. So I'm really, really pleased that it has everybody's full support. So thank you very much, officers. You've done a fantastic job on this. I'm just going to invite the officers to conduct the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on now to item 15, and this is MCA/22/55, the approval to consult on a revised table of fares for Hackney carriages. In the absence of Councillor Fleming, I'm going to introduce this report. The purpose of this report is to provide some background to the recent assessment of options for modifying the Hackney carriage maximum fares and to introduce the rationale for proposing option 2 as the preferred option. The consultation was carried out with the Hackney carriage trade to determine whether there should be an increase to the maximum fare that can be charged, and if so, what this increase should be. Referred to for the 4 options presented. Views were also sought from the trade as to whether there should be one tariff for both Mid-Suffolk and both Babergh. A majority of responders, 59%, preferred option 2, with option 4 following with 20%. Option 2 gives the trade the greatest scope to increase fares as they see fit, with some degree of flexibility. Given the level of support, this is what is being recommended to Cabinet today. During the consultation, it was confirmed that the meters in Mid-Suffolk are set to measure different units of distance than those in Babergh and cannot be adjusted to make the systems consistent. Therefore, it is not currently practical to impose the same tariffs across the 2 districts. As such, further consultation was conducted with the Mid-Suffolk taxi trade, and the proposed tariff, reflecting option 2 and attached at Appendix A of the report, was agreed as the preferred new fare schedule. A report was presented to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee on the 3rd of February, and their decision was to recommend to Cabinet that they adopt the revised table of fares, but to also include the calculations on the table in metric and miles in order to assist members of the public. These changes are reflected in the proposed table of fares at Appendix A. Further to this recommendation, the Licensing and Regulatory Committee recommended that Cabinet request the licensing team to investigate the costs and practicalities of replacing the Mid-Suffolk meters and to report back to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee at a later date. Under Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, should Cabinet decide to adopt the revised table of fares, the fares must be advertised in a local newspaper and on the Council's website, allowing 14 days for consultation. If no objections are received, the approved charges can take effect. If objections are received and cannot be resolved, then the matter must be returned to committee for consideration. And I'd just like to point out a typing error in your pages, in your paper pack, in your packs. Page 319, the row on tariff 3, the final column where it says 0.20 mile, that should be amended to be 0.05. And I would now seek a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Do we have any questions from anybody else? No? Does anybody wish to debate this item? No? In which case, the recommendations are, it is recommended that Cabinet, following consideration of Licensing and Regulatory Committee's recommendation, approves the revised table of fares for consultation attached at Appendix A to this report, and in accordance with Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, this was consulted as option 2 with the taxi trade. It is recommended that Cabinet, following consideration of Licensing and Regulatory Committee's recommendation, request the licensing team to investigate the modernisation of Hackney carriage meters. All findings are to be reported back to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee at a later date, with delegated authority to develop a delivery plan to be completed by June 2023. So I'm now going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Next is item 16. This is MCA/22/55, the Skills and Innovation Centre on Gateway 14. This report contains confidential appendices. So if members wish to question and debate the appendices, we will have to go into a closed session before the debate, and we will come back to open session to take the vote. So I'm now going to invite the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth to introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm delighted to introduce paper MCA/22/56, the Skills and Innovation Centre at Gateway 14. As you said, Chair, contained within the appendices is the initial business case for the centre and the ask of Cabinet today is to note this and endorse the decision to proceed to a full business case. Members will be well aware that our aspiration for Gateway 14 exceeds beyond the significant sums of inward investment and the thousands of jobs that it now offers. Numerous studies, of course, have identified a skills gap within Suffolk and Mid-Suffolk in particular, and Gateway 14 offers us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to address this. We know too that innovation is a key driver of growth, jobs and wages, and as an administration, I believe we must do everything we can to create the conditions in which innovation can flourish. The appendices sets out in detail how we aim to achieve this through the Skills and Innovation Centre, but I will list the key components now, namely a technology-enabled learning environment, modular and micro-learning, a local labour market observatory, lettable grow-on spaces, and flexible meeting rooms and conference facilities. Such an offering would help reinforce Gateway 14 as one of, if not the most exciting economic development in the east of England. Further, as part of Freeport East, the opportunities presented by the Skills and Innovation Centre will help drive economic growth across our district, county and the wider region. As you will see from the appendices, significant progress has already been made, including on the detailed design of the scheme and the extensive evidence base that underpins these proposals. But there is much work still to be done to develop this fully. The appendices sets out the various gateways through which the scheme would need to pass before becoming a reality, and it is for this reason that I'm asking Cabinet to endorse the decision to proceed on this basis. Both myself and officers here are happy to answer any questions on the detail contained within the appendices, but obviously, Chair, that would then entail going into the closed session. But if there are any questions that can be dealt with in public session, then I'm also happy to take those questions first. I'm delighted to propose the recommendations in this report, therefore, and would ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Okay. Councillor Flatman?
Very happy to second this project. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Do we have any questions from Cabinet? Any questions from anybody else? No? Anybody wish to debate this item? Okay. So the recommendations are that Cabinet review and note the initial business case attached as Appendix A, the confidential paper, including high-level development appraisal with initial costing estimates, revenue income opportunities and viability requirements, indicative costs of borrowing and latest version of the scheme design layout, including an indicative schedule of accommodation. That Cabinet note the work to date on the operational management strategy and the findings and conclusion of the Res Publica report, which is attached as Annex F1 of Appendix A. That Cabinet endorse the option to further develop a business case for a combined skills and innovation centre. And that Cabinet note the forward funding of revenue spend from within existing budgets to complete the next stage of business case development work. It should be noted that where forward funded revenue spend can be later capitalised, it will be. So I'm now going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you, everybody. Well done for sticking the adhering to our climate initiative pledges in not having too much heating on at once. So this is the final Cabinet meeting of this term. So I'd just like to take this opportunity of saying a really big thank you to Cabinet, our opposition members here, keeping us keeping us sane. And also, especially to all of our officers who attend regularly and support us in our endeavours to keep our residents and our tourists and our businesses all safe and everything working smoothly. Now, this is, as I said, this is the final Cabinet meeting of this term, so the next Cabinet meeting will be on the 12th of June. Cabinet, could I just ask you to
Stay
remain
for a minute,
moment?
please. Can we just
We
remain
haven't
seated?
finished the meeting yet. Hang on.
The minute's not finished yet. Please remain seated. Thank you.
Okay. Just we're just going to do item 17, which is the option to go into closed session. And just to clarify that the appendices are exempt and confidential. I'm just going to hand over to our monitoring officer for clarification.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It was just to absolutely clarify that those appendices are confidential, because at the end of this meeting, someone could put in an FOI request and say, well, you didn't actually pass on a resolution to say those documents were confidential. So going forward, we just need to do that. Obviously, it's an ongoing duty for the council to keep looking at its appendices to see if they're confidential, but at this precise moment, they are confidential. So if we just revisit, well, not revisit, we just move on to item 17 and pass a resolution, or don't pass a resolution to make those documents exempt.
Okay.
So if we just read out item 17, that's the way to do it, and we'll just do a vote.
So to consider whether pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against the item. The author of this report, proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda, is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So that is appendices A, B and C. I propose exemption. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Richardson?
Happy to second that, Chair.
All in favour, just raise your hand, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I apologise for the confusion. So the next meeting of the new term will be Monday the 12th of June at 10:30. Thank you very much, everybody.